Hello and welcome to the Effekt podcast, Season 3, Episode 9. Name your character if you wish, it will not save you. My name is Matthew.
And I'm Dave, and we, as usual, I've got a bumper load of stuff to talk about today. We are here recording nearly a couple of weeks after Dragonmeet, which was fabulous, and naturally enough, we are going to talk quite a bit about that today. It was great. It was a great event. Then we're going to talk a little bit, now that Alien RPG has officially been launched as of 3 days ago from when we were recording. We had a couple of people asking about Hope's Last Day that, as you'll know, Matt and I produced for the book. And we'll talk a little bit about how the life cycle, the story of how Hope's Last Day came about and how we ended up with that as the scenario. World of Gaming, we've got a few things to talk about there, some really interesting stuff. And then Matthew is going to talk about Mörk Borg, a new game that's come out through the Free League Workshop, I think, isn't it? Then we have a player in Hamam, Mira Manga, who was running the podcast zone at Dragonmeet. Matthew had a chance to chat to her for a few minutes about all of that and about her experiences of playing Coriolis, which should be great. And then we'll wrap up with me talking a little bit about something which, again, a few Alien players have raised, which is Alien signature attacks against synthetics and androids. How should they work? So that is a packed agenda for today.
That's a lot, isn't it? In fact, we should shut up and not do our usual banter about anything. Because we haven't got time to waste.
We don't have time to waste today.
The slight change in the order then means that we're talking about World of Gaming a bit later on in the programme, because we'll talk about Dragonmeet and Alien and stuff like that first. But before that, let's say a big thank you to Niclas Jarborg. Now, actually, Dave, you're the one with the better Swedish pronunciation. Is Jarborg right, or is that a cheese?
Well, that's a bit harsh. It depends, because I haven't seen it written down properly. So you've written it down. I don't know whether the A after the J is an A, an air, or an So it's impossible to tell. So it could be Jarborg, it could be Jarborg, it could be Jarborg.
I'm checking what he said on Patreon right now.
And obviously the O of Borg could be as well, so that could be Berg rather than Borg. So you have to.
We're just useless linguists generally.
No, but if you'd written it down properly, I would have been able to pronounce it, or at least have a go.
Well, actually, it is. I've written it down exactly, or not exactly, actually, but I've misspelt Niclas. But the surname is exactly as it appears on Patreon. So thank you, Niclas.
Yes, thank you. Even though we've dissected your name here. But, sorry about that. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your support. It means such a lot to us.
It does.
And Niclas is really keen, by the way, in Patreon. He's messaged us and he's hoping that we can get more of the stuff that we've written to talk about on the show, our essays, out in print in some form. So I promised him that we're working on that for the Free League Workshop.
Yes.
And we should look forward to that.
And some of it is already up on both of our respective blog sites.
He has found our blogs already, but he'd like to have it all in one place.
Yeah, that makes sense. And my blog
one place
should be the Free League Workshop, absolutely.
Yes.
And my blog's a little bit out of date. I haven't put a lot up there lately, so...
No, we've been so busy. Somebody said to me, I'm following your blog, but you're not putting much on it. And I realised that we haven't done much.
No.
We'll put all the content from this episode on our blogs. PDQ. How about that? We can make that promise at least.
Yes. Next week for me.
Yes. One of the reasons why we haven't...
Don't want to overpromise.
We've been preparing for Dragonmeet, and then we've been recovering from Dragonmeet.
Yeah. So
let's talk about that.
Indeed. What a great day. Yeah, I mean, my general reflections are, this is the third year that I'd been to Dragonmeet as a competitor, wrong word, as an exhibitor in one form or another, either as part of the podcast zone or as we were this time, Free League. It just gets better every year, frankly. It gets bigger every year, which is brilliant. And just have such a great time. It's fabulous meeting all our old friends again. It's fabulous meeting all our new friends. It was fabulous to meet those people who are kind enough to support our Patreon page, who I hadn't met face to face before. So Jonathan, Neil, and obviously seeing Paul, as we met before. Fabulous, really good. So
And Phil, let's not forget Phil.
Well, yeah, who could forget Phil, eh? Phil's so up there, actually, that he's above almost being a patron. He's more than patron. He's patron something.
Hold on, no favouritism here among our patrons.
No, not at all.
Be careful.
That's true.
Back off.
Yeah, I'm going to start making that beeping noise that buses make when they reverse. No, I mean, but he
Phil
does,
is equally as lovely as all our patrons, I'm sure.
He does have a very good alien thing for his hat, which is what I meant to say. No, it was fabulous. It was great meeting them all, and it was fabulous having some of them play in the Grindbone 2183 tournament as well.
Yes, Neil in particular played in that. How did he do?
No, Neil played in that, and Jonathan played in that. So Neil did really well. He got through to the final. He did end up cornered in a cell. Well, actually, spoilers, because the
final isn't out yet. We
did record the tournament. It's been going out. I think there's one episode left to go, which is the final. Neil made it to the final. I won't spoil that, but Neil did do something.
Well, you can spoil it actually, because that's going out tonight and this isn't.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so fine. So Neil very bravely took on a xenomorph drone hand to hand. Did actually damage it when he punched it in the head, but was inevitably mercilessly killed after that. Jonathan unfortunately had a much worse fate, in that he was in one of the heats. He'd done everything right. He'd gone up to the upper level. He'd found himself a suit of armour. He was looking for a weapon when one of the other players came up behind him without him seeing, whacked him on the head with a wrench and put him out in one blow.
Oh no. Now, I haven't listened to every moment of these things. Obviously, I've been listening to quite a chunk of them, checking sound quality and doing noise reduction and clipping and stuff like that. What I didn't hear was anybody finding any of the guns that I'd left in that place. Did anybody pick up a gun?
Nope, nobody found a gun. Frankly, they didn't really have a lot of time to search for things. So one thing that I found was and this is really actually almost inexcusable for GMs like us with such a lot of experience, we woefully underestimated how long each round was going to take. We gave each round 30 minutes, thinking, a couple of xenomorphs, everyone will be dead, really quickly. The first round took an hour and 5 minutes to run. The second round took 55 minutes, and it's thanks to Mira, who is obviously on the show later on, and we had a bit of space behind us that we were able to extend. Otherwise, we'd have run out of time completely.
Yeah, we started half an hour early, thinking, luxury, but no.
But it was great. I mean, it was really well done. Everyone came to it with the right attitude. Everyone got really stuck in and enjoyed the game. But we didn't really have time to hang about. Certainly in the later rounds and the final, I really had to just chuck them into it almost right in the middle of it to begin with. Only simply to be able to get us through to the end in the time we had available. But it was brilliant, really good.
But that's not the only thing we did. I mean, it was thoroughly enjoyable, I'm sure. I wasn't there. I was working the stall at the time.
You were. You and the others, Tony and Morgan, who helped us out, which is brilliant. Busy selling every copy of Alien that we had, and we could have sold at least that many again. The other thing that was wonderful was we also sold every copy of Forbidden Lands that we had sent over to us. We sold all of the Forbidden Lands. We sold all of the Tales from the Loop. Things from the Flood, sadly, didn't sell as well as I'd hoped, because that is a great game. I do wonder if it's, as I said the other week, languishing in the shadows of all the other games a little bit, which is a real pity. And we did sell some Coriolis, which was fabulous.
We sold all the Coriolis.
Yeah.
We sold our stock of Coriolis, which originally we weren't going to get any stock of that to sell at all. So that feels good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was great. There was obviously a big rush in the morning when pretty much everybody and their wives wanted a copy of Alien. So we sold out of that first, didn't we, I think? Even though we had about 50 copies of that.
We sold out of that within 2 hours. and I think Forbidden Lands went first, didn't it? Because we had fewer copies of that.
Yeah,
So
but I think we still had a copy left. Well, although
anyway,
I'd opened a copy because I think Forbidden Lands really sells when you hold the books.
Yeah, true.
And so we did have that sort of demo copy that we kept for a bit and then sold. So maybe we'd sold out of all the sealed copies before we'd sold the last Alien.
Possibly, yeah, maybe.
But I think we're looking forward to a 2020 that will be out there in the wider world, the year of Free League.
Yes.
The Alien has definitely put them on the map, and people are going to discover all their other great games.
Yeah.
And be raving about them.
Did you see that?
Sweep the board.
Did you see that Alien has topped the drive-through selling
exactly
list?
Number one on drive-through on the PDF.
Number one. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's really good, and I don't want to prejudge anything, but it feels like it ought to get some pretty good recognition from conventions and judges and competitions over the next 12 months.
I think so.
I think so too.
Yes,
but moving back on, you said you mentioned the panel. So it was a panel run by our friend Chris Handley from Darker Days Radio, and it was a horror role-playing game panel. I was the least experienced of all the panelists in terms of actually producing stuff in the industry, but obviously possibly the oldest person on the panel just about otherwise. And that was brilliant. That was really good. We had about an hour and 10 minutes of excellent conversation. The audience got stuck in as well. We had about 20 people in the audience, which was really nice for what was basically the last slot on the day, and a lot of people had gone home by then, I think. And that was a great chat. So I really encourage people to go and look up Dark Days Radio. Look it up anyway if you haven't been listening to it. It's a brilliant podcast. And have a listen to the recording of that. There were some really interesting points that were brought out if you're interested in horror role playing.
And that is coming out next week. I just communicated with Chris and said when's the recording going to come out. So next Friday's episode, I think, of Darker Days Radio will have that recording. Talking of Dragonmeet and Alien, we've had a couple of questions about Alien, and we thought we'd discuss one of them now.
Yeah.
But Dave, you got the question, so maybe you want to tell us what the question is.
Yeah, so I'm a member of Alien RPG Discord community, and one of my friends there, guy who goes by the handle of Wolfclaw, was chatting to me and was asking a little bit about what was the sort of the creative design process that got us to where we were with Hope's Last Day. And rather than spend hours typing on Discord, I thought, why don't we just talk about it?
And then put the link to the podcast on Discord.
Exactly.
Plan.
Indeed. So,
so what do you think he's looking for? The process of scenario design, or the story of us coming up with the idea, or what?
No, so Wolfclaw was saying that he's relatively new to role-playing and relatively new to GMing. So he was interested in our thoughts about the sort of creative process and how we actually designed the scenarios. So I think that's the angle we want to come from, rather than the boring old story of us at UK Games Expo, which everyone's probably heard by now.
No, but I think there is a key point we should say, in that this isn't the sort of scenario you would have designed for a full session, like the recent one that we played, Aurora.
Alien Aurora, yeah, the cinematic scenario that I'm writing up, yeah.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about what you did in putting that together in terms of helping him design scenarios for his session.
Yeah.
Because...
So his question is here. He says, how long does it take you to write down new content? Where do you get the inspirations for them? I'm currently working on my campaign, and so far the beginning looks great, but I'm still a very fresh RPG player GM.
Okay, right. So I think my first point, just campaign-wise, don't worry about the rest of the campaign. Take each scenario in turn, because I think, if you map out your campaign, the first thing your players will do is turn left and walk in a direction directly opposite where your campaign is mapped out to. So don't get bogged down in writing up too much stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, there may be some key things you're hoping to lead them to, and you might think, I want this sort of scene happening. But I think coming back to Hope's Last Day, there were some key things that we wanted to put in there that made it very easy for us to put the scenario together. And it is important to say that we were doing it as a convention demo scenario. So that has an implication on how we structured it, how much writing there is, and stuff like that, which might be different for a home game. So because it was a convention demo scenario, we wanted two things. We wanted it to be relatively short and simple, and we wanted it to have aliens in, and proper aliens. None of your neomorphs from Prometheus or whatever. We wanted alien type xenomorphs. And so that's I think where we started from, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. And I think the original kind of commission for us in the first place, before it was suggested that Hope's Last Day, as it was finally written, would be in the book, was to prepare the convention demo games for UK Games Expo last year. And we decided, because it was a demo scenario, we were effectively launching straight into the third act of a cinematic. But we decided in our sort of discussions before we got around to writing them that it would be really quite good to try and have a 3-act kind of feel to it. So we ended up doing 3 third acts effectively, which were Hope's Last Hand,
Hope's Last Chance. Oh, Hope's Last Hand.
Hope's Last Hand, Hope's Last Dance, and Hope's Last Stand. And the 3 of them were intended to. One was a kind of like space trucker style of heist. One was colonist based, where you're just trying to survive, and the third one was more of a colonial marine combat kind of thing. You're the militia trying to make one last stand against the aliens, and that was where we came from in our setup for those scenarios. But in each one, it was important to I think to do what you would normally do for a kind of horror style game, which is to build the tension as slowly as you could. Now, it's difficult for us in a convention game that was only going to run 90 minutes, that you can't linger too long on that stage because you've got a lot of role-playing and gaming to get through to finish the game on time. But, so I think in that one, it was, certainly from my point of view, you were trying just to get the tension going right at the start, which in Hope's Last Day, you get that because you start the scenario as written anyway. You start the scenario when you sort of step into the action, almost, at the end. It's interestingly, though, I have seen a number of people, including my son Morgan, who ran it, who took the scenario back a step and had you going out and then breaking down. So he allowed you to role play all of that rather than hand wave it as part of the introduction, which I thought was really good. Which is one of the really good things about the way Free League have had us write these scenarios, and the same goes for Chariot of the Gods. You have your location, you have your setting, and your what's the story mother, but you've got the location. So the great thing with Hope's Last Day is you've got, as you said at the start, a relatively simple and straightforward scenario, but it's set in Hadley's Hope, and you've got the information for Hadley's Hope. You've got the location, you've got the maps, you've got some detail about all of the locations, and you can do what you like with it. It's both a sandbox and a relatively simple scenario, all in one, that allows you to run it depending on how much time you've got and how much imagination you have about what you want to do at Hadley's Hope. I've had some people talk to me about running aliens using all of that. So you just basically play out the scenario, the film. So,
absolutely. I mean, if we go back to when we originally had the idea of putting it there, it was quite a flippant little joke, actually, in that we'd got the play test packet, hadn't we, from the guys at Free League. So we were among the first people in the world with the rules. Our group, your brother Andy, didn't know that we'd even got these things yet because we were under an NDA.
Yeah.
And we did start off by saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be fun to be playing a game of Tales from the Loop, but setting it on Hadley's Hope and give people Tales from the Loop characters and have them,
as kids,
solving a mystery, what's going on in the medbay, and then when they see their parents getting killed by the alien, then switching out and giving them alien characters." So that was our idea of using Hadley's Hope, and it's kind of slightly, we had to kind of negotiate that with Free League when it then came to putting it in the book.
Well, it wasn't so much Free League. It was more their
Fox.
contacts with Fox, because their concern was Hadley's Hope's been done. It's been in lots of books. It's been in the films. Everyone knows it. It's not necessarily exactly in the timeline of where the Alien books start, so it's slightly ahead of that. But Thomas and the Free League guys had understood how good it would be to have Hadley's Hope in the book, and understood where we were coming from, and they argued in favour of keeping it. And as you can see, it's in the book, and I think it's absolutely the right idea. I think it would have been, it sort of would have been great if it had been, Bob's Base or something. But having Hadley's Hope, which everybody knows, everybody recognises, everyone has their own feeling about it because they've seen Aliens. I think that was actually a stroke of genius, almost.
Yeah. And actually, again, there were lots of approximations and plans of Hadley's Hope on the internet, which, various different versions, which inspired us in different ways. But one of the key things that we made quite essential to our thinking for all those 3 scenarios initially, but then also for the one in the book, when opening in the book, we were limited for space, and the 3D guy said, why don't you just have one floor of Hadley's Hope? And we argued that we wanted to retain as many locations as we could.
Yeah.
Because those locations themselves are inspirations for adventures.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things for me that I think best illustrates that is doing one of the other scenarios, actually, Hope's Last Hand, which is a heist on a casino before they realise that the place is infested with aliens. There was a sort of tunnel connecting the building we'd put the casino in to the command centre, and I thought, I don't think that's very likely to be a used tunnel now. Wouldn't that be a great place to hide the aliens? So that's the aliens base, because it's a disused tower now, and we fill it full of stuff, we turn the lights out, and that's where the alien is moving from and building its thing before it builds the nest that they eventually build
in the processor. Yeah.
And so, that location itself gave us an idea for a thing, an encounter that might happen. And then blow me down if everybody didn't go across that bridge and meet the alien when we were playtesting at UCAC. So, that was a thing that might happen. It wasn't part of any of the actual adventures, really. That was just, that's where it goes. And here's a description of what it's like, full of boxes, the lights aren't working. And so I think one of the important things when you're planning out a scenario is you may have a storyline, but it's also worth just putting a few lines down for locations that the players might never go to, but if they do go there, might actually inspire a whole different adventure.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing about the way that Free League want freelancers like us to write these scenarios, where you have events. And the events, some of them, if you're going to run the scenario as intended, some of them will be complete. You'd have to run those events if you want to run the scenario that way. A lot of them are entirely optional, and you can obviously throw your own ones in if you have a good idea. And that works really nicely, because it not only allows you to run the scenario on pretty strict lines if you want to, if you're short for time, say, at a convention, but also it allows you to go off those rails as far as you like. And it as I said, it's on the one hand, it's almost a complete sandbox. At the other hand, it can be as railroady as you will need it to be if you've got limited time.
Yeah, if you've got 90 minutes, you can railroad the players. If you've got time to play, give them the space to play.
Yeah, exactly. Let it breathe. So I think so we had all of that. Then part of the problem that you alluded to was clearly there is a word limit. There was an amount of space in the book, and we could have no more. So when it came to selecting which of those 3 scenarios they wanted us to lead with, they wanted us to lead with Hope's Last Dance, which was the colonist one. They didn't want us to have it as the band, which we'd put into the demo, which was quite fun.
That's the best thing ever.
But I can understand.
That's the best idea. They're just taking it out.
I can understand that. But they were looking at it very, very firmly from a point of view of, we've got this book, 400 pages, we've got this amount of space for this bit, and obviously they were juggling everything else at the same time. We were only working on this one small part. of it. And I was working on the xenomorph stats and attacks as well, but otherwise we were just working on this very small part of it. So I think for them it's very easy to say, right, lose the basement. That's an easy way to get rid of a load of words. We argued against it. Some of the best moments in the demos that I ran happened in the basement for various reasons. There are certain events that can happen down there. And they agreed, but we then had to cut the words right down. So I remember spending a lot of time thinking, okay, I've got to lose 800 words out of this 900 word description, which was fun. It was a good exercise in drafting, and we got the essence of what we wanted. So that worked.
But I think that's an important point there about your correspondent asked, how long does it take to write all this stuff down?
Yeah.
Is actually you don't need to write all that stuff down, and indeed, we edited out you edited out a whole bunch of my lovely words for some of those basement descriptions. Bastard.
Sadly, there wasn't much of yours left in it at the end, but
yeah, but despite the fact that all that gold dust, honestly, was taken out, it hasn't affected the scenario that badly.
No, it hasn't affected the scenario at all, actually, no. Because as with all these things, what's written down in the scenario will not survive first contact with your players. So don't overdo it. I think one of the things that a lot of new players who perhaps have only played D&D suffer from is you see a D&D module, it's packed full of text. You've got sort of 3 or 4 paragraphs to explain the description of a particular room. No, don't need to do that at all. It's way too much. If there's some important elements of that room that you want to make sure you reflect when you run the game, put a couple of lines down, a couple of bullet points, and leave it at that. You don't need to go into all that kind of flowery language when you're writing these kind of things. And in fact, it's quite hard, actually, to pull yourself back from that. So you mentioned Alien Aurora, this cinematic scenario that I've written. And I've written it in the style that Free League would expect. I've got no idea whether they're going to want to pick it up or not, but they might, you never know. So I've written it in that form. I'm going through the process at the moment of trying to cut out half the words, because I know if they do want to look at it, the first thing they'll say is, make it half as long. Straight away. I guess maybe that argues for me putting more words in, and then when they say make it half as long, I've got more space to play with. But you have to, again, the point I'm making is you don't have to overburden your scenario with unnecessary language and words.
No, a few, as you say, bullet points to remind you what you're imagining the place might be like, but then, keep the description actually as light as possible, I think, when you're doing a home game.
Yeah.
So that you can make stuff up on the spot, or, the players can say, is there a thing here? And you can go, yes, there is. It's over there to the right-hand side.
Yeah.
I think, doing even detailed technical maps can be a bit of a problem in that they can become a limit, and so can all the words in a published scenario. Absolutely. I think the reason why they have more words in published scenarios are, sometimes writers get paid by the word, but also, you've got to bulk it out a little bit. And it's somebody paid any money at all for a scenario and then got the sort of notes that I write for some of my things, they'd feel they were ripped off.
Yeah, but I think also there's a really good point there that when you're writing for somebody else to take your scenario and run it, you don't have all that stuff you've got loaded in the back of your mind.
No.
That you don't bother putting down on the paper. But when you're doing it for somebody else, you have to somehow get all of that reference material, all those ideas on the page so they can pick those up as well. And that can be quite hard to do in a concise way. I found that with these recent scenarios.
And in fact, when we were writing the stuff for the scenarios, even though the audience was only each other, I think we felt we had to describe what was in our heads for each other, because we were going to be running each other's scenarios.
And I think
interestingly, something that was in my mind.
Yeah. And interestingly, both you and I, when we went away to write our respective first drafts of those scenarios and came back, the product that we brought back looked totally different from one another. So the way it was set up, the way it was written, how much detail you put in. I think you had yours sort of on a side and a half, and I had about 10 pages or something. which is just reflects our different styles as GMs in when we actually create stuff. Which is going to be, everyone's going to have a unique style. So if you're writing something for somebody else, you have to bear that in mind and try and make sure you get enough information down that they pick up your idea in the same way. It's a Chinese whispers thing, isn't it? You don't put enough down, they pick up your idea, but it's subtly different. Now it might be better, actually, the idea they pick up, but it might not be. So it's a fine balance to find there. The other thing I would say about campaign games that you mentioned earlier is when I'm preparing a new campaign, I will have an idea of what kind of the core protagonist is, who they might be, and what their overarching sort of objective and motivation would be. But then I don't worry about it too much. I might think about, okay, what are they doing? What does the bad guy do that impacts on the lives of your players? And then that forms the scenario. So the bad guy might rob a bank, or they might murder somebody that they know, and it's you've got to. What I'm driving at is you've got to see how does your player group view, what's their perspective on the actions and the activities, the adventure that's happening that you want them to get engaged with. How much of that do they see, and why do they see what they see? And that's based on the motivation and the objectives of the big bad guy.
Yes.
I'm not sure how well I explain that, but...
Yeah, but I think that is the key thing. Particularly in a game like this where, okay, you're going to have monsters of various sorts, but they're kind of procedural in that, what you do is you create an attack table and you roll a d6 for how they behave. But people, their behaviour is infinite. So you've got to have an idea about what their motivations are, what they want out of the world, but don't fill it with too much detail.
No. Because
it's going to be, how do your players react to them, and just enough clues to say, how do they then react to the player's reaction.
Yeah, indeed.
Just one other point. We're talking about this quite a lot, but I think there's another interesting point about what we did in Hope's Last Day and writing scenarios, especially for campaigns. And it comes out actually of a comment that I've been talking on Twitter with one of our listeners and a co-host of a podcast called Idle Red Hands. And they got Hope's Last Day, and they said, well, the thing is, it feels like it rushes to the end too quickly. And of course, it's a third act of a scenario, so yes, it does. And they wrote different agendas so that they could do the agenda swapping thing that happens in a cinematic scenario.
Yeah.
We've only given all the characters their one agenda, and it's a third act style agenda. It makes things happen, like in a third act.
Yes.
So it might be a thing that you want to practice at, and I think actually writing agendas for cinematic scenarios is quite difficult, as we found with Aurora, in that sometimes one's person Act 2 agenda might totally nullify another player's Act 3 agenda.
So that's one thing I'm trying to adjust in the redraft for Aurora, is to try and take away that risk. Because, as you said, there was an action that one of the characters took, which, as you said...
I took. Blame me.
Which was an entirely reasonable and justified action for you
and
to
dramatic,
do.
And dramatic. It was good, actually.
It was very good. But it did take away completely the agenda for the third act for one of the other players. So that's a this is playtesting, so I've learned that, and I'll change that for the next one. But it's a risk that you need to bear in mind if you're doing agendas for an Alien game. Absolutely. For
a cinematic game, now of course they're a bit different in campaigns, so it's probably less of a risk when you're planning scenarios for campaigns.
It's interesting. Whilst we've been recording, somebody else on the Lux,
on the Alien Discord,
Lux on the Alien Discord had said, I was wondering, how did you settle on Hadley's Hope as the setting for the cinematic? What was it that suited your intentions for the story? So I said, I'm recording my next podcast right now, which covers this exact point. I'll post it here once it's published. So,
excellent.
Someone here then said, a guy called Matt Devdug came up and said, oh man, so cool. Well, hey, as a rookie GM, I appreciate how easy Hope's Last Day is to run. That's great feedback. Thank you. Ooh.
Yeah, that is. And it is. And I think this is a really important point about the Alien game, is it's bringing more rookie GMs to the table,
Yes.
which can only be good for the hobby as a whole.
Absolutely.
So that's really great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, we have got the rest of the podcast to do.
And we were supposed to try and not talk too much today, didn't we? Let's launch straight into the world of gaming then. We've already mentioned the Free League Workshop. Did you want to say anything else about that? I think there's some news.
Yeah,
Isn't there?
so our latest rumour on that, clue on that, is the Free League Workshop is going to be going live next calendar year in February, early February. So hopefully we'll have this Christmas period, Dave, you and I, to redo some of our content and get that onto the workshop ready for that launch.
Not sure when I'm going to get the time to do that, but I'll do my best.
Well, no worry. You said last time we recorded that I should get the Song to the Siren.
Yeah, I think you should. That's
So that's going to be my project.
That's a great scenario, and doing that as kind of a one shot or a opening scenario into some kind of campaign. Now that was, I don't pay you compliments very often, Matt, but that was an excellent, really good couple of scenarios.
Well, it's one scenario. We just took a long time to play it.
A couple of sessions then, yeah.
Yeah.
But so, if anyone's listening and you see that up on the Free League Workshop, and you like Coriolis, or even if you don't like Coriolis, but you fancy giving it a try, get that Song for the Siren. It was a great scenario.
But what I have to do is turn it from a page and a half of scrappily written notes into something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
As we were discussing before.
Yeah.
Just the other thing I thought in the world of gaming, it's not new. Well, it's not new to me, but it's new to you. A couple of weeks ago, I think you played Blades in the Dark.
Yes, yeah, I've had a couple of games of that now. Recommended to me by you, and then one of my friends here, who's in the board gaming group that I don't tend to get to very often, came up and said, "Oh, I've found this new game. I really want to run it," and it happened to be Blades in the Dark. So, first things first, just as a very parochial kind of little thing. My friend Paul, who's been running it, he's run it once, and his son Connor's run it once. He's got some kind of industrial printer for his company, and he printed out like a 5 foot by 5 foot map of Duskfall in really good quality. So that just sits on the table. It's absolutely brilliant. It really makes it. I know people don't have access to that kind of kit very often, but having the map.
It's called a plotter, Dave.
Is it? Well, I don't know. I've got a shit little printer here that won't even do bloody landscape printing at the moment, which is a right pain in the arse. Anyway, it's brilliant. But yeah, so the game, I'm still coming to grips with it a little bit because the approach is a bit different. It's great fun. The idea that you have your little gang of ne'er-do-wells, and we are a bunch of just thieves and saboteurs. And you go and do heists and things, and you throw yourself into the action without any or much planning, but then you kind of retrospectively plan through a mechanism called flashbacks, which is a really nice idea. It's a really nice idea for getting the players to engage in the narrative style of the game, which is really nice. I love that. But it's a bit hard to get around when I've spent my entire gaming career planning stuff in advance. So actually getting used to the fact that you effectively flashback to plan stuff in advance when you find out what problems you've come across is I've just got to get my brain around it. But it's good. It works really nicely. The rule system is very simple. The character archetypes are really fun. I'm playing a leech or lurker. I can't remember anyone. A saboteur, who learnt his trade at the feet of the professors in the university where I was the janitor. But I'm so nondescript. Everyone looks through me and just talks and as if I'm not there. So he picked up lots of stuff just by listening to them talking whilst I was dusting their offices. But now I'm a criminal in this gang. But it's really good.
No, I really enjoyed the game I played, and I bought, and I think we spoke about this before, I bought recently Band of Blades, which is a more military campaign version of that rule set.
Okay.
and I'm
One-
interested in trying it.
One thing I thought that this would work really well, the rule system, the way it's worked, that in my experience anyway, given there's only 2 games, it would be perfect for a Firefly campaign. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
It would be. It's
Well,
just.
there is another version of the rules called Scum and Villainy, and that has got 3 or 4 sort of settings, one of which is Star Warsy stuff, one of which, though, is very much a Firefly type thing.
Cool.
So yes, somebody's already had that idea and made money out of it.
It fits perfectly because the first heist we were doing, which was basically robbing the money stash of a rival gang, basically from under their noses whilst they were fighting another gang. I was just in it and thinking, this is Firefly. What am I doing in Duskfall? I'm being Mal Reynolds here. This is brilliant. But yeah, really good.
That's good. Now we ought to get on. Keep the pressure on, because
Yep.
this will be a long program.
It will.
So the other bit of news can sort of segue into my next essay.
It can.
And that is, I got a delivery of a fabulous book called...
Pronounce it right. Pronounce it right.
Called Mörk Borg.
Hey, yes.
And it's in Swedish. That means the Dark Tower or the Dark Fort. Well, tell you what. Stop listening to me. Instead, listen to me. We don't do reviews. We tell you about the games we like because we play those games. We occasionally tell you about what we don't like about the games we play, but we tell you these things because we play the games. If we were a review podcast, we'd have to play the games, and we don't have time to play all the games that we've already got. So, like I said, we don't do reviews. But here I am reviewing Mörk Borg, and we haven't played it, so what the hell am I doing? Well, first of all, let's talk about why I backed the Kickstarter. The first reason was that this is a book that comes with Free League's name on it. Though that's only one of the names. This is, in many respects, an indie project, supported with Free League Publishing's experience and distribution. It demonstrates how the Free League has grown. When they first started publishing in English, they looked to Modiphius for their experience and publishing networks. Now they are in a position to take a similar mentoring role for the creators of Mörk Borg. As an aside, it's interesting to note that there are 2 Free League logos on the cover, their standard publishing logo type, and one for the Free League Workshop, the brand that will soon appear on Drive-Thru as an outlet for fan-created content. All that content will, I think, be supplementary material from most of the company's stable of Year Zero game engines and Symbaroom, not standalone games like this one. The other reason I backed it was the typography. I am a typography snob ever since I trained with proper metal type back in art school, and the sample pages on the Kickstarter campaign convinced me I had to have this book, even if I never played the game. So it is in that spirit with which I am reviewing Mörk Borg, not so much as a game, but as a book for your library. We'll therefore return to typography in a while. But first I want to talk about how the book feels. Never has so much thought gone into RPG texture. I've raved before about how the texture of the Forbidden Lands book is exactly right for the neo-traditional nature of that game, but I'm blown away by the mix of textures in this slim volume. You may already have seen the rushed unboxing video I made for our new YouTube channel, and if you have, you will note that I couldn't stop fondling the book. It starts with the subtle embossing of the illustration on the front cover, and it ends with how different signatures, the blocks of pages that are sewn into a hardback, are made with different qualities of paper, so that the rules are smooth and the scenario is rougher. This is not a book that you want to buy on PDF. Actually, there is another reason you don't want the PDF. In a rare lack of attention to detail, the PDF has been compiled without separating the cover from the interior spreads. So where the design goes over 2 pages, and it frequently goes over 2 pages, PDF readers can't appreciate the beauty of the layout. Looks like we're talking aesthetics already. So be it. The book looks gorgeous. It has the aesthetics of the photocopied punk rock fanzines of the 70s and 80s. But that analogy does not do it justice, because if you haven't seen it, you'll be thinking it's black and white. It isn't. It's a riot of colour, with cadmium yellow colours, bright emo pinks. It switches between monotone, spot colour, 3-colour and full-colour printing between spreads. It even uses metallic foil. It is only a slim book, but every turn of the page is a surprise and a delight. I said we'd talk again about typography. Now, you should understand that as a typography snob, I hate poor use of type. Every time my co-host Dave sends me a document, I wince at his choice of typefaces, the way he uses too many different fonts, underlines all his titles. Gah! I'm tensing up just talking about it. I tell people again and again that just because your computer comes with a gazillion fonts, it doesn't mean you have to use any more than 2 in a document. They use more than 2 fonts in Mörk Borg. There are over 100, but they use them so well. Every spread is a delight. There's a crazy logic to all their choices. In the hands of most people, this would be a hot mess, but the designer Johan Noor knows and loves his type. This is the work of a master. He is also responsible for the illustrations, which have the carefree mastery of early Picasso sketches, each one simultaneously looking like something you doodled in your exercise book at school and something you could never draw as well, not even with 100 years of practice. So let's talk about the system. Now, I'm not a fan, or indeed any sort of expert in that gaming thing called OSR. Hell, I don't even know what the R stands for. Is it old school rules, revival, or renaissance? In fact, just about the only thing I do know is that the OSR community can't agree what the R stands for either. However, I think I have just taken delivery of an OSR game. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand OSR games to be based upon a stripped-down, rules-light take on the early versions of D&D, and this bears all the hallmarks of that philosophy. Regular readers will know that I'm not a fan of the D20 and its linearity. But there are things I read in this book that almost make me want to play the game. For a start, there are no character classes. Well, there are, but that's an optional rule. You start your character by rolling a d6 and a couple of d12s to find out what equipment you have. The d6 gives you things you can carry stuff with, and the d12s give you stuff. Then you roll a d10 for your weapon. Oh, the typography. Oh, the layout. The weapons table is 3 pages long, and there are only 10 items on it. This might sound like a bad thing, but it is not. It is a thing of ugly, punkish beauty. You roll for your ability bonuses too, a traditional 3d6 for each, and hit points. Then step 5 is, and I quote, "Name your character if you wish. It will not save you." Yes, the setting is very dark. How dark? As dark as confronting your worst self on a moonless night in a cellar with a blindfold. This world is ending. There is no way to save it. Your characters are scrabbling for some tiny comfort, some
Well, you're right
moment of
about one
safety
thing, Matt. We
before
don't
the
do
end.
reviews. So I think
It's inevitable.
so we'll just cut that bit out of the
According to
podcast. We're not
calendar of
bothering with that
Necrobell,
anymore.
Your campaign
'cause we don't
lasts
do
long
reviews.
enough for 6 prophecies to come true.
The other thing I would
When
say,
the 7th prophecy
in my
occurs,
defence, seeing you so
this game,
egregiously
your
attack
life
me every
ends
time,
burn the book,
I agree with you,
says.
and I disagree with you, and I'll explain why.
which is
So,
why I will never play.
I totally agree.
I don't
Two
want it to
fonts
end.
and simple
I
typography
can't
is
burn
right
this.
for something that you're producing for a product, or if you're writing it for Free League, for them to then put into the right thing. When I produce stuff, for me, I like to make it look good on my eye, which is why I put highlights in and put underlines
But
in
it
to draw
doesn't
my eye.
look good, Dave.
It does.
Horrible.
It looks good for me. That's the point. You might not like it with your obsessive typography thing about you, which maybe you might need to get over a little bit. But it works for me. So, but I do take your point that for other people looking at it, it would be better if I didn't fancy it up. But for me, it helps me when I'm going back to it to look at it. If I'm, like, for example, Alien Aurora that we talked about earlier. If you looked at that, you would want to murder me.
Yeah, I'm sure I would.
But for me, in running the game, it works because it draws my eye to the right bit of thing in the right moment. So, yeah.
Okay.
But cool, no, really good.
I will just say, if you're doing stuff for submission to somebody, then actually one font is all you need.
Yeah.
Double spaced and various codes H1, H2 for heading levels and stuff like that.
Well, usually, if you're doing submission for somebody else, they will tell you what format they want it in, and then you can work off that. Yeah. But yes, it's good advice. But yeah, so I haven't seen this book other than a picture of it online. But I'm guessing
Watch my video on our new YouTube channel.
I'm guessing you like it.
I really like it. I almost want to play it, even though there are many things I'm not at all interested in a D20 system.
No.
I mean, we do Symbaroom, that's D20 enough for me. And it's one of those ones where I think the whole idea is you're not meant to live very long, and it's but just the character generation made me go, oh, I really want to roll up a character and play this.
Yeah, that sounds nice and simple and straightforward, which is often a good thing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that kind of struck me is this kind of a narratively focused game more, or is it a
no, there's a dungeon.
more GM-driven game?
I mean, it gives you a setting, and the setting is horrible, and everybody's going to die. The rules, including monsters and stuff like that, are 71 pages.
Right.
And then there's 16 pages of an adventure. It's old school. It really is an old school dungeon delve.
Right. Because just from listening to what you were saying there, I got, again, sort of visions of 10 Candles, which is a game where you will die, but it is a completely narrative game. There's very little rules in it. The rules in it are there simply to encourage your narration rather than anything else. So it's very different.
Yeah,
obviously.
actually, that 10 candle thing is in it. Let me explain a little bit more about the mechanic. I mentioned the calendar in there that has 6 prophecies, and the 7th one when you're all dead. There's a sort of mechanic around that is kind of fun, I think, or would be, in that the GM actually, creates adventures, in dungeons, all sorts of stuff that are typical fantasy fare. But at the start of every session, you roll a dice, and if you get a 1 on that die, I should say, then one of the 6 prophecies happens. You roll that one randomly,
Right.
and the die you roll is by agreement with the players. So if you want a long campaign, you roll a percentile dice,
Okay.
and then you've got years of pain.
And it's only if you roll a 1 where the prophecy comes to fruition.
Exactly, yeah.
Right,
and if you've got you want to run something for 6 months, a bleak half year, you roll a D20.
Yep.
If you want a season, a fall in anguish, roll a D10.
Okay.
A cruel month, roll a D6. Or the end is nigh, you roll
Or
a D2. So
or D2, okay. Not even a D4.
not even a D4. I quite like that little. That's one of the little mechanics. I thought, oh, it'd be fun to play this, and then
Yeah.
just have a D6 or something. But we don't play enough. We've got too many games we need to play.
Yeah.
This is not one. I mean, maybe if for some reason we want to do a special at some point, if one of our other games is cancelled for some reason, we need something on the fly. But even then, I think I'd prefer to do another Tales from the Loop or Things from the Flood, really.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, sometimes it's fine just to buy a game just because you love the game, the look of the game, the book. So I've got a lot of books on my shelf, gaming books that I've never played and never expect to, but I bought them because they are beautiful bits of creative artwork.
Yeah, and I did wonder actually whether my boy might play it with his group at some point. I'll introduce it to him. Shall we move on?
Yeah, I think we've got a quick players in the Hamam discussion to have, haven't we? Which is relevant to our conversation
we're moving
earlier.
on, and we're moving back to Dragonmeet.
Back to Dragonmeet. Okay, well, let's listen to you talking to Mira from the Podcast Zone.
So I'm at Dragonmeet, and I'm with Mira.
Hello.
And Mira, tell me, who are you and what makes you famous?
Okay, so there's a long list of things that makes me famous. Are
You're
you
a
ready?
very famous person.
I used to be in bands when I was younger.
Oh, cool.
Played Reading Festival, did that kind of thing.
That sort of band when you
Yeah,
were younger.
when I was younger.
Cute.
Then as I got older, I wrote a book. So I'm an author, published author.
Wow.
But the reason we're talking today is because today I'm running the Podcast Zone at Dragonmeet.
And it's been a great podcast zone. We
you.
are entirely exhausted.
We are completely drained. I don't know why we're doing this now. We're so
It's
tired.
the end of the day, but this is cinema verite. This is and so now Dave and I have been manning the Free League stand for some time. Dave, we have come down here to be part of the podcast zone. We ran Grindbone, which might be surrounding this very interview. I don't know quite how I'll edit it all together.
We'll see how it all fits in.
But we haven't been actually in the meet and greet, friendly chat area of the podcast zone very much. So how has it gone? What's your impression of Dragonmeet and of the podcast zone?
So Dragonmeet is my favourite convention ever. It was my first kind of convention as a gamer that I came to. I went to Star Trek conventions when I was little. My dad used to take me to kind of, all kinds of geeky conventions, but Dragonmeet is my convention. Dragonmeet is the start of Christmas, and I love it. I love all the volunteers. I say hi to them every year because they're just the kindest, most awesome, passionate people. The podcast zone at Dragonmeet is an opportunity to gather together podcasters who are into gaming. So they might play games on their podcast or interview game makers or even be creating their own games. Just anything to do with our passion, our shared passion. And they've always had a space the last 2 or 3 years at Dragonmeet. This year I was asked to organise it. So the main thing about the podcast zone is bringing together all these podcasts, introducing them to each other, because as you know, when you do a podcast, it's normally you and 2 mates in a room. Here, we've got 24 different podcasts, and they're all chatting, they're all networking, they're planning to play on each other's podcasts. How many times can I say the word podcast?
We can say podcast a lot in the podcast zone. But...
And not only that, but the podcast zone has been running games for attendees of the conference here. And it's just a really great space to show this is a new burgeoning creative field where people are creating amazing content, like as a result of their love of gaming. So we're trying to make a space where the general public can come and see them and learn about things they might love to listen to. And the podcasters get to be together to kind of galvanise their ideas and work together and become this network of friends. So it's a really lovely area to look after.
Brilliant. And I don't want to put you on the spot here, but we've been to the podcast zone for a couple of years with Callum organising it from the Release podcast. What do you think you've brought to this year's show?
Okay, so let's go deep. I feel my philosophy of life is that life is suffering. The only reason we humans are here together is to try and alleviate each other's suffering and bring more joy to each other's lives. So what I wanted to do was everyone who came to bring a podcast and do work here with us was going to have a lovely time. They were going to make friends. There were going to be so many opportunities for them to record things, interview people, some amazing quiet spaces to do gaming in.
Huzzah!
Yay! That their needs were taken care of. My job was to make us an amazing safe space, invite some wonderful people, and make sure everyone had a really happy, nurturing day. And I feel like we've had a lot of love and nurturing today.
It feels that way to me as well. And I've got to say about those quiet spaces.
Yes.
Last year and the year before, every single podcast was crammed for a tiny slot into one small room from which they made the PA announcements.
Yes.
And here we are, we're luxuriating in space here.
I know.
This is one of 3 or 4 rooms that you had?
This is one of 3 rooms, and we've had, you could fit 40 people in one of the rooms they've given us if you had them all sat in a row. So we've had the luxury, thank you so much Dragonmeet, of 3 spaces just for podcasts. And so we've had a paint along with Geek Girl Bookworm.
Yeah, she's a friend of the show. She's been on the show a couple of times.
Friend of the pod. And we've had horrors being played out. We've had your show, and just a really nice spread of various diverse gamers. So it's been amazing. Hopefully next year, this is my wish. Next year we'll have even more space. And we will get to do some live audience podcasting. So kind of a show feel where we are part of the entertainment. And also this year we had 18 feet of table.
Yes.
Like 18 feet.
Yeah.
And we've had like 20 chairs. So previously we've had 2 or 3 tables. So Dragonmeet have been amazing this year. And I feel it may be because I've been on the phone to them. I started really big and I was like, I'd like to bring down Nightmare Live, and I want Adventurers Wanted to come and perform. And John was like, okay, pull back a bit. But he has been amazing. I've literally checked in with Dragonmeet. I've said what I've needed, and they've kind of trusted me. And hopefully when you came in, you saw all the posters, the signage, we have the banners. So we're growing, we're kind of becoming toddlers now. So,
Brilliant. Now, that's not the reason I called you in here.
Coriolis!
So yeah, we were having a drink yesterday, in the day before Dragonmeet, when we were so much less tired than we are now. And you just happened to mention that you play Coriolis. And
Yes.
I said, we're a podcast about Coriolis, and we have to interview you. So,
Wow.
how long have you been playing Coriolis?
I've played 3 sessions of Coriolis.
So far?
I come from a group that has been very, very steeped in 5th edition for many, for maybe 2-3 years. And everyone wanted to play a sci-fi game. Coriolis was something that we'd all kind of heard about. And our brave friend Effekt, she took on the book herself. And she started, she's being our game master recently.
Yeah.
It's so very different to the 5th edition that we've been playing, but we're really enjoying it.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about your character?
So my name's Mira, so obviously I'm from the planet Mira.
Mira. Yeah, the system of Mira. Yes.
System, oh God, see I'm so new, sorry. Don't send hate mail.
I think, which is named after the planet of Mira.
And I'm Mia Lee, because I like to keep it all sounding very similar. And I am a musician, because I normally play a bard.
Yes.
So I also love being the face. I love being able to be charismatic and talk a lot when we game. But the brilliance of Coriolis is that a couple of people in our 5th edition who were not that vocal. So now one of them is Max Powers, the pilot.
Oh, right.
And we have to restrain him from doing donuts. Like he says things like, I speed as far as I can up to the ship and I pull like an inch from the hull to show them how great, and that is his main thing. Max Power is a pilot. And another really quiet player we have called Pre, he's taken on the role of a ship intern.
Oh, right.
So he basically, will follow whichever character is doing the action and, just be learning and, helping out all the time. And that's given him a way to kind of, like ship's intern, he's kind of carved this role out. And then, other players will be like, who gets the intern today? Because in engineering, we're like, if he helps me with this, well, actually, I was going to have him pray in the chapel for me, So it's been quite fun.
So we're talking a little bit about mechanics here.
Yes.
You've come from D&D 5th Ed.
Yes.
The Coriolis mechanics are very different. How's everybody coping with that?
Well, everybody in the game are every single player in that game is way better at mechanics than me.
Right, okay.
Luckily, we're playing on Roll20, so I have my little D6, and people say, oh, Mira, roll 3d6 now. So I'm getting quite a lot of instruction. All I know is to beware of darkness points and try not to give them to the GM.
Yeah.
Last session, none of us gave her any darkness points. She was furious. So we're coming to grips with having to give that power away. So alien to us. But what I love about the system is it actually feels, this is going to sound stupid, it actually feels like a sci-fi based system.
Yeah.
It really lends itself to that kind of Star Trek feel, or I don't know if that makes sense. But and also only having a D6. Like, you know, what about my strange knobbly ones and my caltrops, my D4s?
You'll have to get into Forbidden Lands if you wanted some knobbly ones as well.
Okay.
No caltrops in there, but we've got D8s and D10s and D12s.
I'm willing to be led to the Forbidden Lands.
That'll be a lovely thing maybe to do next time. But just coming back to something you mentioned, you talked about prayer.
Yeah.
And, you know, get the intern to pray in the chapel. One of the things I love about it is how prayer is built into the mechanics. And
Yes. The gods.
Yeah.
And they are like very, very helpful, except when they're not.
Exactly.
And also, I haven't got my head around this, but there are two types of tribes. One tribe made up these gods.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Broadly speaking, I think we don't know quite. So you're talking about the first Scum
And the
Zenithians.
Yes.
And the Zenithians having meant to be kind of colonials.
Yes.
Who are arriving in this place and sort of exerting their power over the
already established.
indigenous. I mean, not really indigenous because they
just got there earlier.
They just got there first.
Yeah.
And so that, but I feel that's the sort of feel we're meant to go for. And yeah, it feels to me that the first Scum have loaned their culture to the Zenithians, and the Zenithians have just bought into it.
It's a very interesting dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I quite like that. I find it interesting. I like the idea that you get your own deity. I mean, it reminds me of the old days of muds. I don't know if you've ever played them, but if you had a certain deity in a mud, it was actually a person, a systems admin.
Right.
And you could be like, Merlin, help me. And they would send help.
Yeah.
So I really love that resonance because I'm really old. I don't know if I'm giving that away now. But yeah, I love that it's got this mythology.
Yeah.
In 5th edition, you can have a god, but you don't go into that background. You don't have this culture to kind of spring load your gameplay off.
Yeah, there's very little in a lot of role-playing games that make you want to go to church.
Yes.
And I was saying to somebody as I was selling Coriolis to them earlier on today that I've played Pendragon for 30 years, and Knights in Pendragon are very pious Christians.
Yeah.
Never once, I feel, have I ever gone to church in game.
Never taken a knee for an actual god in that game.
In Coriolis, it just encourages you to visit the chapel and to pray to the icon before you're doing something and earn the benefits of that. And I love that. That. Right, okay, I've taken your time long enough. We've got to be closing down the podcast zone very shortly, I guess.
Yes, time to go home.
Is there anything you want our listeners to check out before you do of your work, or have you got a podcast of your own or whatever?
I would really encourage anyone who's listening, check out the Podcast Zone. We're at Podcast Zone UK on Twitter, and we just have such a great range of podcasters. It'd be really great if you had a little look and see people you'd love to listen to. I do my own podcast. It's called the Girls on Tour podcast, but it's not necessarily about gaming.
Not about gaming,
no. Although I did interview Satine Phoenix. But I would say if you're a podcast fan, please let it be known. Review, tell your friends. 5 stars are all super important. It's a baby burgeoning culture. There are a lot of voices out there. So if you find one that you love, please 5-star it, and then you'll have made a fairy live or something.
That's brilliant.
Also, if you ever need someone to come and play, I'd love to play a game of Coriolis with you guys, just saying.
Okay, we'll make that happen at some point. And I've got to interview your GM, obviously, to get her angle on it too.
She's going to tell you what an awful player I am, but that's fine.
That's okay. That's okay. We like lots of diverse voices. Anyway, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Mira, and we'll sign out.
Thank you.
So it's really good to hear Mira's take there on a lot of stuff. But the first thing I would say is that the Podcast Zone was a great success this year, I think. I mean, it was a great success in previous years, but the location where we were was better, I think. I mean, other podcasters would tell us whether they liked it because actually we weren't there very much. I mean, I was down there.
No, we ought to be
simply,
fair and say that we didn't do our service in the podcast zone as a whole, did we? Because we were running
other than running our recording elements for the tournament. No, because we were on the Free League booth. We were obviously not down there very much. But certainly going there, it was, even though the actual podcast zone sort of front door was in a sort of a small hallway between levels, I thought that worked quite well because you had to walk past them to go from the main trade hall up to the main gaming halls and the second trade hall.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you couldn't miss them. And also, that was kind of the front door to a little suite of rooms which were really well set up, which most of them were there for podcasters to use. So I thought that setup worked really well, even though I don't know how it felt sitting in that hallway all that time. But it looked good to me from when I went down there.
Yeah, I think it was good. Remember the first year we went, we were right by the entrance again, sitting in the hallway with absolutely everybody coming past us.
But that was just a couple of tables against the wall. It didn't really work terribly well.
Yeah.
Because people just walked past us. Nobody really knew what
we were.
What was on offer. And you were right in the thoroughfare. So if you stopped, you just blocked everybody behind you. The whole place was just crammed with people. So that didn't work so well. The second year, last year, we were in a room which actually was the trade hall for us this year, Trade Hall 2, on the upper floor. And that was better. But then we were
just about the only people there.
We were kind of too far away then, though. So it was better space to be in, but there was no footfall. So I think this place, of the three options, was by far the best one.
Absolutely.
But also, I mean, I think Mira was very, very patient, certainly with us, because we were overrunning. She did quite a lot to facilitate our lack of organisation in running the podcast, the Grindbone 2183 tournament in the time that we'd originally been given. So I think, she gave it a really nice feel and a really nice sense. She never looked angry or upset or was never telling anybody off. Was always there trying to facilitate and make it work, keep everybody happy, which I thought was really good. And it was a great job, well done. I sincerely hope she's going to be involved in it next year because it worked really, really well. And great to hear that she plays Coriolis as well, especially...
That's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah. So who doesn't want to play Coriolis? I encourage all players to play Coriolis, especially if all you've played is D&D. Go and have a go at Coriolis.
Talking of Mira being so accommodating with us overrunning, I notice we are overrunning and we still have a whole article to go. Your essay on another alien request, actually, one that I spotted on the Free League forum, where somebody there, and I should have noted their name, said, what happens when an alien does their special attack on somebody who's an android?
It's a good question.
Oh, is it? Because I was rather hoping you had the answer.
But luckily, I have the answer, I was about to say, before you chipped in. Right, well, let's hear what I've got to say about that. Some fans have asked a question about androids, synthetics, and how they are affected by the signature attacks of the xenomorphs. It's a really good question. Some signature attacks inflict stress and panic rolls. Others see the target getting throttled, and in game mechanics terms, suffering the effects of drowning. Other signature attacks, if successful, automatically inflict a specific critical hit on the poor victim. But how do these attacks affect a synth? Well, we could leave it up to individual GMs to rule for themselves, and with a little look at the synthetic critical hit table on page 111 of the book, it shouldn't be too hard for a GM to work out on the fly what might be a suitable substitute for a human's critical hit. But as I wrote the original signature attacks, I feel honour bound to answer your questions. What I'm offering is focused specifically on the XX-121 xenomorphs, but the rules here can easily be applied to the neomorphs and abominations, as well as the other extrasolar species in the book, the swarm, harvesters, Tanakan scorpionids, and lionworms. In thinking about synths in the game, the first thing that came to my mind was this. Do aliens automatically sniff out a synthetic person? My take on it, because I thought this was more fun, was that Xenos wouldn't be able to detect this until and unless they tried to attack them. And this gave me the idea for an egg-gathering squad of synthetics who deliberately get face-hugged in order to capture live eggs from facehuggers. But sadly, if you want to follow the canon, which of course in your game you don't have to, this isn't the case. I had a brief chat with the lore expert for the franchise and the setting writer of the Alien RPG, Andrew Gasker, and he told me that the Xenos can see straight through a synth and aren't fooled for a moment. But this doesn't mean they don't attack them, of course. If a synth is a threat, then it's just as likely to be eviscerated by a xenomorph as the next man or woman. It just means that facehuggers won't bother trying to impregnate a synthetic person, and an adult Xeno might ignore them until they become a threat. I say might deliberately. But back to damage and signature attacks. Naturally enough, synths take damage in the normal way, so any signature attack that includes an attack roll may damage the synth, as will an acid splash. But for specific signature attacks, handle them in the following ways. Obviously, if the synth is immune to the effect of an attack, for example, take stress or make a panic roll or suffer the effects of drowning, these are ignored. This includes the chestburster's birth display that otherwise shocks witnesses, causing them to roll for panic. The attack called Capture for the Hive, which is attack number 5 for a stage 4 xenomorph, stalker, scout or drone, or attack number 4 for a stage 5, which is a soldier, worker or sentry. This attack does damage, but otherwise has no effect. A xenomorph that makes this attack against a synth will look to inflict maximum damage rather than pull the attack to inject venom. It knows that the venom will have no effect. For the facehugger tail grapple attack, which is attack number 4 for the facehugger, a roll of 5 or a 6 on the type of tail grapple cannot choke or panic a synth. And attack number 6 for a facehugger, the final embrace. The facehugger can successfully use a full facehug against the synth as an attack. The synth isn't broken though, but is blinded as the hugger is covering the synth's eyes. The facehugger will hang on until a good moment to let go and flee presents itself. But otherwise, it may be impossible to remove without acid damage to the synth. Make an acid splash attack if it's cut free. Moving on to chestbursters. So there are 2 attacks here that would apply. So attack number 5, the leg slash. The synth suffers a critical injury, but it's number 2 off the synth critical injury table instead of the listed injury for a person. And the chestburster throat bite, which is attack number 6. Roll on the synth crit table. A result of 6 counts, and the synth's head is smashed. But otherwise, apply crit number 4. The head is dislocated. Moving on to the head bite attack, which is attack number 6 for stage 4, 5 and 6 xenomorphs. Roll on the synth crit table. Again, a roll of 6 counts, and the synth's head is smashed. Otherwise, apply crit number 4, and the head is dislocated. The other attacks that are still left to consider are stage 6 attacks, and these are Praetorian, Crusher, and the Queen. For attack number 3, which is Beastly Bite, just roll 1d6 on the synth crit table. For attack number 4, Crushing Blow, roll 3 times on the synth crit table and apply all the results. And finally, for attack number 5, the Tail Spike, the synth suffers critical hit number 6 from the table and is torn in 2 by the blow. In effect, it does a bishop. That all feels about right and narratively satisfying. I'll post this up on my blog, rpggods.org, so you can have a printed version if you want one. And I hope that helps.
Yeah, you make the point that this is a kind of an improvisational task. If you're confronted with this in play and you haven't got this lovely stuff that you've set out here in front of you, you would have to improvise. What effect does that alien attack have on an alien, on an android, I should say?
Yeah.
So the game does require you to maybe improvise, but it's helpful that you've created these rules for people who might be less experienced at doing that sort of improv, being GMs.
I was just going to say that because I think having been GMing now for 40 odd years, kind of forget what it was like to be
old man.
I know, forget what it's like to be a young new GM, sort of treading the GMing boards for the first time, and where some of us might just go, oh, we'll make something up on the fly, and are totally comfortable with that. I could totally get where some people would be going, okay, I'm a new GM, where's the rules for this? I'm not quite sure what to do here. So actually having the rules set out to guide those people who want a bit of guidance or just a nice easy way of managing it in the game, then that's a good thing to do. So I'm glad the question was raised, and I'm glad I've taken the time to have a quick look at what we could do here. The one thing I haven't done is specifically looked at the neomorphs and the abominations and the extrasolar species to say, well, for this particular attack type, this is what happens to a synth. But actually, what I've done here for the XX121s is easily applicable to those. So you should just be able to cross-refer if you've got a harvester doing something horrible to a synth and it gives a critical hit, then just refer to this, and that'll guide you in the right direction.
I guess so, yeah. And I think it does make a larger point. So we've already played this quite a lot, and also I'm noticing in the social media that people are kind of going, no, this panic table is not very extensive. After a few games, the same panic keeps coming up, and maybe it gets a bit boring. And I think it is beholden, as we get more experienced DMing it, to maybe be able to improvise different panics that are more situational, and to get a feel for what the effect of a level 9 panic is, as it were, compared to a level 14.
Yeah.
And then create something similar in impact, but not necessarily the same as the same wording that's used in that panic table every time.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's thrown into sharp relief because we've played a lot of cinematic games and players are playing cinematic games at the moment. So therefore, you're going to get a lot of panic and you're going to roll the same things quite a lot. The same thing applies, I think, also to the signature attacks. So if you're having a lot of cinematic games where you've got xenomorphs in there, you come across those signature attacks quite frequently. Now, when I was listening back and editing the Grindbone tournament that we did in Dragonmeet, doing that is actually a really good thing for me because it picks out parts of my GMing performance that I think I could have done better. Now,
yeah, I noticed all of those.
We can all improve, Matthew. We can all improve. But particularly, I think, so what you should do as a GM with those signature attacks is not necessarily kind of read out the text or even have the attackers exactly the same, but it's that style of attack. And as you get more familiar with what they are, then you can sort of narrate a different approach to that kind of signature attack rather than having it exactly the same every single time. And I think that's something that a GM will be able to pick up as they get more familiar with the rules and are more comfortable with the game system. And the same thing obviously applies to the panic table as well. Yeah.
I do wonder whether actually, there could have been a little paragraph in there that says exactly what you've just said. Use these tables to begin with, but you'll, over time, you'll be able to improvise similar levels of damage that are more situational or something. But never mind. We're telling you this now with our years of experience.
Well,
and we've played quite a lot of Alien games.
We've played a lot. I mean, there's probably not many people in the world who've played Alien more than we have, actually. I would guess.
I know I'm ready to stop playing Alien now. Play some more Coriolis.
I'm still really enjoying it. Well, I just need more time to play everything because I want to play more Coriolis as well, and Forbidden Lands, and Simba Room, and Blades in the Dark, and Star Trek, and L5R.
Maybe even Mörk Borg one day.
And even Mörk Borg one day, yeah. Good. Well, but I hope that piece is useful, and if there's any feedback or any other thoughts from anybody, please fire it back into us. We'd love to get responses from our listeners to what we're putting out there and fresh ideas.
And this, I guess, is going to be the last of our magazine episodes for this year before Christmas.
I suspect it will be, yes, sadly.
So all those ambitions for games you want to play or carry on playing are going to be New Year's resolutions, I'm sure, in January. But between now and then, we've got, I think you're away for a lot of Christmas, aren't you? So I think I'll try and find some time maybe to edit the second part of Song to the Siren and put that up as an actual play.
Excellent.
And then
I will have time. I still intend. So we've got Alien Aurora recorded. There's quite a lot of it, so it's going to be quite an edit for that one. But I intend to try and crack on with that. So I might try and get episode 1 of that ready before Christmas. But fingers crossed. I'll do my best.
Okay. Well, so either some form of science fiction, either Coriolis-like or Alien-like, will be out around Christmas. And then I guess we haven't actually scheduled any date, so I don't know when we're going to record again in January, but we will record again in January. So until then, enjoy the actual plays that we put up, and have a great Christmas.
Have a wonderful
or
Christmas.
winter festival of your own choosing.
Indeed.
Anything else we need to say?
Just God Jul.
That'll be in Swedish, won't it?
Well, all the Swedish listeners are like now slapping their hands on their faces going, oh my God, how badly pronounced is that?
Until the middle of January then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
And may the icons bless your adventures.
You have been listening to the Effekt podcast, presented by Fictionsuit and the RPG Gods. Music, Stars on a Black Sea, used with permission of Free League Publishing.